the meeting to order, the October 17th meeting of the Ag and Rural Committee. Could we ask for an approval of the minutes from the September 19th, 2023 meeting?
So approved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, a like sign? Ayes have it. The agendas, or the approval of the minutes. Public hearing for non-agenda items. I see no one here other than you guys are, I know what you're here for, so I see no one else. I'm sorry? Yeah.
Bo is here. Bo Stafford is here.
Okay.
For the solar.
Correct. Well, and they're here for the agenda items. Well, we don't have anyone else for a non-agenda item.
No, we do not.
So that agenda review is item 4. Deanna?
No proposed changes to the agenda. I think we're all set to just continue as the agenda is written.
Thank you very much. Item number 5, Mr. Stafford and Mr. Murphy, if you would step up. Adam, we'll ask you to step away. Take your phone. Adam is one of the committee members, but this proposal goes on his land, so it's only proper that he recuse himself from this. You bet. You're a citizen through in this part of it. So we'll call Mr. Murphy.
Okay.
And if you could introduce yourself and kick your meeting off.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Peter Murphy. I'm joined today by my colleague, Seamus Fitzgerald, who's behind me. We're going to talk about the Strix Solar Project, which is proposed. A little bit more about the company we represent is One Energy Renewables, where Seamus and I are based in our Madison office. It's a Seattle-based company, but at this point, our main office is in Madison. I think there's about 72 folks who work for the company in total. We're an independent developer of renewable energy projects, specifically solar. This next slide is just a map of some of the projects that we've done around the Midwest. You can see there's a lot of them are in Wisconsin. Most notably, this year we are finishing construction on our 6 megawatt Tyto solar project, which is also in Fitchburg. That was proposed around a year ago, at about this time of year. A question we often get is why are solar projects getting built in Wisconsin? And this slide begins to answer that question. You can see on the left axis is, or the y-axis I should say, is the levelized cost of energy for a megawatt hour, and then time is the x-axis. So over the last dozen years or so, the price has come down precipitously. Back in 2009, we were looking at 36 cents a kilowatt hour for utility scale solar, and fast forward a dozen years or so where it's come down, the price has come down an order of magnitude to about 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour. So the pricing for solar power is essentially at parity with what a utility pays for their wholesale generation costs. So there's an economic case to be made, all of this is to say. This slide kind of hammers that point home. The green line is that 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Circled in gold here is utility scale solar, and you can see this is among the cheapest electricity on the grid today, rivaled by wind. But that seeks to answer the question of why are solar projects getting developed in Wisconsin, where we think of Wisconsin as a kind of a dark, not the sunniest place to live, especially in comparison to places like Arizona and Nevada. Excuse me. So farms are already an inextricable part of our energy mix today. About 37% of our corn plant goes to ethanol as an additive in gasoline. When a farmer or landowner decides to change their commodity from corn to sunlight, they're using their land much more efficiently. We're talking about 100 times more efficiently than with corn. If all solar projects were built as efficiently as the Strix solar project would be built, we would only need a little over 1% of Wisconsin's total farmland to generate 100% of Wisconsin's electricity needs. There's 3 tenets to site selection for a solar project. The first is existing electrical infrastructure. So this project, just like the Tidal project, is interconnecting to distribution lines that already exist adjacent to the site. So we're not doing significant upgrades to the distribution lines. No new, it's not like a gigantic project that needs a new transmission line to be installed or anything. When we're siting projects, one of the hardest things about siting a solar project is really finding a location on the grid where the existing electrical infrastructure can handle the new solar project. So we're looking for a 3-phase and a substation that needs minimal upgrades. So basically, we find a site, submit it to the utility studies it, and tells us basically how much it would cost to do upgrades, or if they will be substantial or not substantial. And that's often where a project will die in the early stages. The second tenet of siting a solar project is the actual parcel. So generally speaking, we're looking for a nice rectangular piece of land, usually between 20, 30, 40 acres, that area. We want it to be relatively flat. We want the depth of bedrock to not be too shallow. I'll talk about why in a minute. We want to avoid wetlands, floodplains, that type of thing. Just like any other development. And then the third tenet is an interested landowner. So we want to work with somebody who is willing to lease the land for 30 years. And on this lease, it's a 30-year lease with a 10-year option to extend at the end of the lease. So as you can imagine, that's pretty difficult to find as well. And in this case, all 3 of these tenets have come together. We have a landowner who's chosen this path forward, and that is why we're proposing it here. Oops, wrong way. All right. A little bit more about the actual components of the proposed solar project. So we use bifacial solar panels, single-axis trackers, and steel racking. The bifacial solar panels are something that have, they use technology that's tried and true. Solar panels have been around for around 70 years or so, but they keep getting more efficient, and one kind of great leap forward in efficiency is bifacial. So you can see the back of these panels. Let me grab 1 second. A typical solar panel, residential solar panel, looks like this and has a polymer backsheet. The panels that we use are bifacial, meaning they absorb sunlight on the top, but also on the back. So when there is a snowy day, or when there's snow on the ground throughout the wintertime, we can take advantage of what's called the albedo effect. So that's when sunlight is reflecting off the snow. These single-axis trackers run north and south, and throughout the day, early in the day, the panels are facing 50 degrees to the east, and throughout the day, they track the sun until they're facing about 50 degrees west as the sun is setting. They're mounted on these steel torque tubes you can see in the picture. So this line is running north and south, and then these panels are facing east or west at this moment. And then they're mounted atop steel I-beams that are driven directly into the ground. They're embedded at a depth of 8 to 10 feet. That's why we don't want to have a shallow depth of bedrock.
Peter, what I did not ask you, should people jump in with questions during your display, or should we wait till the end? Apologize,
It's probably
I did
best
ask.
to wait till the end. I'll
Okay,
probably
very good.
answer
Thank
many
you.
questions that'll arise. To give you a sense of the height of the solar panels, typically the highest they get is about 8 feet when they're at their highest extent. You can see the fence in this image too. That's an 8-foot tall fence. So you can see it's taller than these panels here, which are probably about 6.5 feet. These guys are probably around 6 feet tall. Again, a little bit more about the fence. We use a deer exclusion style fence. Again, 8 feet tall. The posts are wood or steel. All the projects we constructed this year have steel or have wood posts. They're spaced at about 20 feet apart. And that woven wire fence, it's similar to what you would see around an orchard. So it's not chain link with barbed wire along the top like you would expect from a power plant. This is designed to aesthetically fit in with the agricultural character of the community. A couple more components are the inverters and transformers. So this is an inverter. What it does is it converts the DC electricity that flows from the solar panels to AC, alternating current, which is what we use on the grid and in our homes. So the panels produce DC, they flow to the inverters convert that to AC. You can see these are mounted on steel I-beams as well. This guy is about 5'3". And then the transformers are similar to what you would see at a school or a department store, just the big green boxes. They're mounted on a 10 by 10 foot concrete pad. There will be 2 of them, and that's the only part of the site that's paved, which allows us to plant permanent vegetation. On all of our projects, we either use a native pollinator habitat or a grazing mix for sheep. In this case, we are in talks with Bo Stafford, who is joining us, about him grazing his sheep on this site. The plan is for him to graze the Tito project and this project as well, if it gets approved and constructed. A little bit more about this project in particular. Obviously, City of Fitchburg, it's 6 megawatts in size. It takes up about 30 acres of fenced area. It's expected to produce 11.9 million kilowatt hours per year, and that's enough electricity for 1,400 average Wisconsin households. Again, it will connect to the 3-phase distribution lines that already exist along Burn Road. It interconnects to the Sain substation to the north. We have a proposed vegetative screen in response to Fitchburg and neighbors' requests that we screen the project. So these would be alternating hardy spruce trees like a Black Hills spruce and service berries along this area. And then this is already screened, but if there is additional screening required, we can add more, and then this area is not screened. So basically, filling in gaps here along the roadway so that passersby and neighbors are screened. There are neighbors to the west as well, and we had a neighbor meeting on October 3rd, and at that neighbor meeting they said, initially they were thinking about asking us to screen it, but then they decided to hold off until they see it. They said, we don't know what it's going to look like. It might not look so bad. And so we talked to them. We'll act in good faith. If the project is finished and they look at it and they don't like it, we can screen it. Just a little bit about project benefits. So there's a anecdote that happens to involve a former Packer. About a year ago, Hurricane Ian directly hit Florida, and this former Packer, Sid Kitson, he has this housing development called Babcock Ranch, and everyone there has solar on their roof, and they also have a large-scale solar project like this, or a community-scale solar project like this. And even despite getting slammed by Hurricane Ian, they never lost power. It speaks to the benefit of having distributed generation, DG for short, in your area. It leads to higher uptimes, fewer outages, and the electricity flows from the project to the nearest load. So it's not like, it's not like having a coal-fired power plant that's exporting electricity to faraway places. Like, the electricity produced by this project would go to the nearest load, presumably homes and businesses nearby. We're also happy to give tours. Anytime folks ask us for tours, we love giving tours, and it's handy that we have the Tyto project really nearby now, so happy to give a tour if folks would like. Solar installer is one of the fastest growing jobs in the United States. These are jobs that can't really be outsourced. It's boots on the ground here in Wisconsin. So we believe this to be, good for workforce development and really a job creator. And then just have contact information, and happy to answer any questions you may have. I think Bo may have had comment as well, but we had spoken earlier today, and he said he may be kind of in and out of this meeting due to other work obligations. So I'm not sure if he's still on the line.
Ready for questions? Are you ready for questions?
We'll have to fill out a form.
How from the road to the first set of panels, how many feet are we talking about there?
It's over 300 feet.
What's the setback?
We set it back over 300 feet. I don't have the exact measurement to the first panels. Give me one moment. I might be able to pull that up. It's kind of handy to have a computer right here. Seamus is telling me that Bo is available right now. It's 433 feet to the road.
Okay.
To the fence. So, and then there's another, 15, 20 feet.
Could you give me that number again, please?
Sure. 433 feet from the road to the fence.
From the edge of the road.
Yeah. Let me see. That's kind of in the middle of the project. About 400 feet at the closest.
And then another 20 feet to the panel inside.
Yeah. So let's say at its very closest to the road, it's 400 feet.
Okay.
Is that okay? Is there an elevation above the road, or is the panels at the same elevation as the road?
The land
slopes up.
It slopes up. Yeah.
Okay, so if it slopes up, and we're looking at screening, it would appear to me that we want to make sure that the screening takes in account that slope. You follow what I'm saying? If it's sloping up and you put a 8-foot tree or a 6-foot tree, and now you're looking over the top of the tree, you have not completed the purpose of the screening, because you're going to look over the top of it. If we have an elevation that goes up, is that correct?
I understand what you're saying. Having just visited the site about an hour ago, I was driving along Burn Road and then parked into what would be our access drive. And as you drive in, as you cross past the trees that exist there today, that screens the entire site. if there were trees planted closer to the project, they would be within the farm field. The idea here is to build this project so that it can be returned to farmable land when the project is over. Essentially, it lasts 30 years by lease, and then there's a 10-year extension. So at most 40 years, and then it would be decommissioned per the submitted decommissioning plan. And so you'll have a field that's been basically rested and has had animals grazing and native pollinator habitat, deep-rooted, good deep-rooted perennial plants. With animals grazing, it's going to be like extremely good for farming at the end of this project's life. And having a row of trees there is not going to be helpful to whoever seeks to farm it, right? And I don't think, I think the screening plan along the road, I understand what you're saying. Like if the elevation was more drastic, that could be the case, but having trees right along the road will sufficiently screen the project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Want to talk about the maintenance on it?
Well, we'll get,
Yeah, I've got a question.
yeah, go ahead, George.
On planning underneath these, you're saying for grazing more? Who's does the maintenance on that to see that the crops, are well maintained, or weeds? And I mean, who's responsible for that part of it? And who will oversee that, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So we're responsible for the beginning of the project. The commercial plan for the project is due to Wisconsin policy restrictions, we have to either sell all the power or sell the whole project to the local utility. So that would be MG&E. They're aware of the project. We've had extensive conversations with them, and everything is looking good. They don't want us to say, we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. Obviously, there's the ink needs to dry.
Right. And
But to answer your question, we would be responsible at first until the asset is transferred. At which point they would take responsibility for operations and maintenance. So they would have decision-making power over that. We contract with a company called NRS that does seeding for the vast majority of our projects, and we oversee that. So we have a vegetation manager whose responsibility it is to oversee third-party contractors who do seeding and maintenance of the projects before.
And you have a history with MG&E that goes back a ways then too?
Yeah, so the Taito project, for example, is wrapping up here, getting finalized in the next couple of weeks, essentially.
No, I mean, how far back does your relationship with MG&E goes? I mean, like back to some of their first solar farms, or?
I don't know the answer to that. Seamus, do you know? The first project we did with them was the 2016 project at Middleton Airport.
Okay. Because I look at some of the O'Brien farm, and I know it takes a while to get some of that established, the pollinator plants, and reading in our packet, 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen a flower bloom down there for...
That's not our project, yeah.
No.
And, I'm just curious. I know there's a difference between a grazing crop and pollinator plants, but... Yeah, I've seen that picture on the website too.
This is.
Is that out
I think it's
in California?
2 years or 3 years, and this one's in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yep. So this is how our projects look. I can't speak for O'Brien. That's not That's not us. So I don't really know anything about that project. But
Also in, us being on the Ag and Rural Committee here, if you got flowers like that, and plants like that, is it feasible to have beekeepers right adjacent? Or would that interfere with the operation of maintenance on the panels?
It can be. It's, in my experience, looking for local beekeepers, it's been more challenging, surprisingly more challenging than grazers. And we have Bo kind of waiting in the wings. I think he probably wants to make comment. So it's something we're interested in, but also when you introduce, anytime you introduce a species of insects, we're talking like thousands of bees, that has ecosystem implications as well. And so you want to be doing that carefully. I'm not saying anything bad about keeping bees or anything, but
that's why I kind of mentioned adjacent. I don't know how.
Yeah. It isn't part of the plan right now to have bees.
But I know in agriculture, that would be a real plus if you could sell that.
Sure.
But
Oh, yeah. What do you know what project that is?
That is Forest City project.
Yeah. This is an image of, thanks, James. This is an image of.
okay, I
let's
can see
here.
it. I can kind of see it.
So these are beehives here.
And then I've got another question on the solar panels.
Sure.
My understanding, you're calling them solar panels, but aren't they? In the packet I see PV, which is more photovoltaic.
Photovoltaic, so photo light, voltaic electricity.
Because solar panels actually are more for hot water or for a liquid for heat, for like putting on top of your house to run a heat pump, duct heater, or heat your hot water. But these are a different type of panel, and are they not, that tells me that they probably are even easier to recycle than
Great question.
solar
I think there's
panels?
sort of two questions embedded there. So the first is just about terminology. I had my father-in-law has a home in Florida, and his solar panels that heat his pool broke, and he emailed me thinking, "Hey, it's the solar guy." And the technology has, other than taking sunlight and using it for something, the two technologies have very little in common. The confusion is that people refer to them. Solar panel is the term used interchangeably. It's kind of a catch-all for something that does that. These are very much solar panels. Solar photovoltaics is the vast majority of solar in use today. Solar thermal is less commonly used, and it's more common in warmer climates, like Florida, where people are heating their pools. And yes, you're exactly right that that technology, there is a market for it. But yeah, these are solar panels, also known as solar modules. And then the whole technology is known as PV, solar PV. As far as recycling, I am not sure about solar thermal recycling. I'm not sure about what's all in there. I think it's different types of polyurethane tubes that are black that, absorb heat.
Wouldn't think they'd last as long, but I'm not.
I don't know the lifetime of the lifespan of those. I'm not super familiar with that technology. These are glass on top with silicon wafers, which is basically refined sand. Silicon is the second most abundant element on the planet after oxygen. So the silicon wafers, and then those are wired together with thin strips of silver. So glass, silicon, silver, and then there's an aluminum frame around it. Then on the back, you've got your enclosure, this black enclosure, which is polymer, and it's similar on the bifacial modules, except it's kind of it's more in the frame to keep out of the way of the sunlight, basically reflecting on the back of the panel. And then you've got your normal copper electrical wire. So it's, yeah, we have a company that we work with called the Retrofit Company based in Minnesota, and they basically do a circuit around Wisconsin, picking up broken modules from community scale solar projects and super large solar projects. And I think they probably would recycle residential solar panels too, but they have a solar panel recycling operation. You can go to their website and see kind of the parameters for that. But yeah, this is the type of module that they recycle. And we have a relationship with them today.
Thank you.
Shelley?
I am the non-farmer member on the committee, so they probably all know the answer to this. But is the purpose of putting the pollinator plantings or the grazing just for aesthetics, or to keep some use, or is it to keep the soil good once it's reclaimed as farmland?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why do we have pollinator habitat, and why do we have grazing? One Energy prides itself on being a low impact solar developer. So it goes beyond planting pollinator habitat or having grazing, but those two things are sort of one of the ways that we go above and beyond. There are companies that will just do, a perimeter of pollinators or a perimeter of flowers or something that's more aesthetic. This is intended to have, better water infiltration. It's better for the land. It's in keeping with the agricultural character of the area, similar to our fence and the aesthetic value of our fence. So these are some benefits. Bo's on the line. I feel bad because Bo's kind of just been waiting. I don't know if he wants to speak to this at all.
Shelley, do you have more questions? I'd like to get through the committee questions first.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
This topic, so if you, and it's
We can come back.
yeah, let's come back maybe.
Okay, very good.
So I think Bo will
Mr.
speak to this.
Stafford is on the TV screen. Good afternoon, sir. Could you address the committee, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Bo Stafford. I'm the owner of Discovery Farm. So I'm testifying in favor of One Energy Strix project, and I'm here to provide information and answer questions about agrivoltaics. I have an unabridged testimony I have provided to members of the committee through Deanna, but I will keep my comments brief and be willing to answer the questions that you have when I'm done. My wife and I own a 56-acre certified organic farm on Hay Farm Road. At Discovery Farm, we produce small square hay and recently started the Katahdin sheep operation. We intend to graze our sheep at the Tidal Solar site, and we are excited to prove the concept of solar grazing here in Fitchburg. I grew up planting tobacco, baling hay, milking cows, and raising sheep and pigs for the Rock County Fair. Nowadays, I work full-time in the state senate, which is why I'm wearing a suit today. Normally, you probably wouldn't see this. Normally, I'd be in my biz. But I specialize in agriculture, broadband, education, and environmental policy. My wife and I bought our farm in the fall of 2019 to help our 2- and 4-year-old children eventually understand the value of hard work, build a love for land, and learn valuable life lessons only a working farm could teach. My passion for farming was a blank slate when we started, and as any first-generation farmer would know, it has evolved. I enjoy a challenge and my skill set to do intensive research and get my hands dirty and make agrivoltaics the perfect avenue to profitably farming, contributing to the betterment of our community, and providing a blueprint for our emerging renewable energy industry partnering with agriculture. This is where agrivoltaics presents itself as an innovative solution. Agrivoltaics, or dual-use solar facilities, combine solar panels or PV panels and agriculture, truly allowing for the best of both worlds. And agricultural preservation and solar industry advancement can go hand in hand if communities in Fitchburg and others across the state evaluate solar projects for agrivoltaic potential. If you want more information about solar grazing as a form of agrivoltaics, I strongly encourage you to check out the information provided by the American Solar Grazing Association. And I'm happy to answer questions about our farm, what we're hoping to accomplish. And please feel free to use me as a resource for any agrivoltaics policies moving forward. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stafford. Any committee members have any questions? We'll have to bring the citizens up, so they may have questions that will be available, but we've not brought them into the conversation at this time yet. So if you could stay with us, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I had just had one question, and in the conditions, if we approve this, it refers to keeping a minimum distance of 175 feet from the existing wetland. And this is probably more a question for Deanna. I thought I read somewhere that the comp plan says it has to be 300 feet. So do we need to modify that?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and staff was willing to work with the applicant here because there is actually a railroad line between the wetland and the fence line. So we don't foresee that there was. Oh.
But they said I need to be available in case citizens have questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So staff was willing to recognize the barrier of the rail line between.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything to the comp plan to permit this? You're saying it's consistent enough with the comp plan?
I am.
Or enough?
I am, yeah.
And just an FYI, to your point, the railroad tracks is a buffer, but there is a waterway that is in the corner of this property that goes under the tracks, but there's quite a bit of distance from there back to where the panels are. I don't know what that distance would be, but I believe that they could probably answer that question.
And I will just jump into.
You'll get your chance.
I will just jump into staff believes that with the pollinator or the grazing, that actually any runoff would be less than row crops.
Okay.
Also, if you look in our packet, I had this question about, there's maps in there on page 68 all the way to about 86 on I guess it's years of the changes in the agricultural practices there. It goes all the way back way back to the 90s, and it shows the water, the wetland, the drainage swale down through the middle of it. Anyhow, I think I was just curious as to why we had all those maps, but it's good to see that, see that there hasn't been a lot of changes in that property over the years, other than just the little crop changes.
Yes, there's been change in the farming practices.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. At this point in time, I'd like to, we have some citizens here that have submitted requests, and we'll call on them and ask them to come up, state their name and address, and address the committee. And Mr. Kopis, you're first.
No, Mark, he couldn't make it. He'll be at the next session.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was just going by what form I have.
I put Kerry Kopis, didn't I, not Mark Kopis?
Okay, yeah. Yes, you did.
Yeah, you got
I'm
it.
sorry. Please,
Okay.
yeah, please, if you could come up. I apologize.
No,
Kerry.
that's fine. So, what was the deal with the,
Ma'am, could you sit down
thank you.
and state your name and address, please, for the
Kerry-
record?
Kerry Kopis, 5131 Burn Road, Fitchburg.
Thank you. Please, if you could keep your comments to 5 minutes.
Okay, so-
Not more than.
Okay, so the, with having the sheep, can I talk to that first?
Yes, ma'am.
How
You
much-
have the floor.
How much are you making with having your sheep graze the property?
Is there a fee charged to the person who's going to graze?
I don't think that's settled. I don't know
Okay.
the answer.
They don't know yet. They've not made the arrangements yet.
Okay, and he doesn't know how many sheep will be around. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay, so you don't have any idea how much you're gonna get paid for this, for having your sheep graze around?
Mr. Stafford, I think the question is to you.
Hey, sorry about that, Adam. I'm at work right now. I'm trying to do this and that. So far that has not been determined fully, but we'll have approximately, depends in the early amount or the early stage of the project. We'll have a smaller amount of sheep because we want to make sure to preserve the vegetation to make sure it can establish well in the facility.
Okay.
But we have.
I'm pretty sure you're a smart person, so basically you're getting paid from One Energy to have your sheep out there, correct?
There will be a component for paying for vegetation control for sure.
Okay, and then Adam's getting paid for having the solar panels. And this is not benefiting my husband and I by any means. I came out here because I was going to have peace and quiet. I was told that it was going to be farmland, but I look at animals or Adam's shed. I look at the semi. People always think it's mine, and it's just frustrating because he doesn't even live there. He doesn't live on the property. And so people can keep promising us that it's going to work, and they don't know, they don't have all the answers, but I need answers because I live out here. I live out here. And it's upset me because I put a lot of money in here, and I can't even build a house because somewhere along the line, the realtor took away my building right. So I can't even build on my property anymore, where I would like to build more on the top of the hill. And now I don't even have that right. So then he has a right to, and I understand both sides of the situation. I understand that, yeah, Adam's going to make money. Good for him. I'd do the same thing. But he doesn't live there. I live there. So that's what's making me upset. And then to have someone else's sheep out there, and he's getting paid for all this, like, those two people are benefiting. I'm not benefiting anything but losing my view and my peace out there. And there's still going to be people coming in and out of the place, and the recycling, I'm lucky if I'm going to be alive in 30 years or 40 years, same with you all, to see if it gets recycled and what happens. Because I know in my woods from farmers, and I have a lot of junk in the backwoods from farmers and old trash and glass and rust and buckets. They can say all they want. It sounds good on paper. And then his mom lives in Milwaukee or Florida. Okay, well, we live in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. So O'Brien, that's not cute. That does not look nice out there. It just doesn't look nice. And so didn't they have sheep? I have sheep, so I have nothing against sheep. But I'm not going to have somebody else's sheep where this man gets paid. I don't even know this guy. And he doesn't even do this for full time. This is his part-time gig. So you got to understand us. In Fitchburg, let Adam put his shed right on my fence line. He couldn't go down by the railroad tracks, and now something with the water down there, like he can't go and put these fancy whatever by the water or the railroad tracks.
I think you've got a good point. But I guess if I were sitting where you are, what I would want to know is how Fitchburg is going to make sure that everything this company says it's going to do gets done. I would want to know if, for example, and we've had another experience on another solar project, where screening is really not what they said. They're not there. So I guess I'd have to refer this to Deanna. How does Fitchburg follow up 5 years from now, 3 years from now, to make sure that everything that we are agreeing to is done? And if it is not done, what recourse do we of a city have? Is that
We
it?
should, just a point of order, Roger, we should allow the citizens to finish their, and then,
Oh, okay.
and then we're getting off track here, so.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah, because, I mean, Fitchburg, you hear they're all strict and everything, but now all of a sudden, I already hear that this is a done deal. I'm like, wait, what do you mean this is a done deal? I don't think it's a done deal. These people, this is their job. This is their job. This, as soon as they get their little paycheck, bye, they can promise me anything they want. I've been there. I know I've been in this business for way too long with having my salon. People can promise you the world. You know what? But he doesn't live here anyways. None of these people live here. So it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. And then with the water, and then for Fitchburg said, to Adam, you can't have your whatever, your shed here, but plant it right on the Copus's view right here. Plant it right on their fence line here. So everyone thinks that's mine. And anyone that knows me knows I got my stuff together. I pick up as much trash as I can and do everything. And I like Adam. I'm just telling you, but he is kind of messing up my kind of thing now.
You're getting close to your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch? Could you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Jerry Lynch, 5029 Burn Road,
Okay.
59 years living out there. I just have lots of questions. One, is the DNR involved in this at all? Have they approved or disapproved anything on this?
That would be a question for Deanna.
So the only time that the DNR would, to my knowledge, be involved is on the stormwater piece. And it's my expectation that the applicants will need to pull a stormwater permit.
Because there's more than one runoff underneath the railroad tracks. There's two. There's one right by Burn Road, and then there's one about 150 yards down the railroad tracks.
I am aware of that.
So there's two of them. And
One is a dry water run, and the other is part of Swan Creek, or part of Murphy Creek.
Murphy Creek, yeah. And in the winter, when you have runoff or a heavy rain in the spring and summer, that fills up pretty good down there. So that's a concern. And then, with people buying stuff up and then coming out to Fitchburg, and then they want to change the land, the farmland that we all grew up and loved, that we wanted farmland. That's why we live out there. And we need to make more money, so they're going to do this solar stuff, but I'm losing. My value of my house is going to go down. My view out my back window when I see 100 and some deer in the spring and the winter grazing on the hillside, I'm going to lose all that. I thought Fitchburg was for the ag and the farmer, and Fitchburg really hasn't been anything for the ag and the farmer as far as I'm concerned. If you could dig them up, Tom Kane, Geet Gunlock, Clarence Burns, all of them never got any help from Fitchburg. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Grunlock. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Jerry Gunlock, 5086 Burn Road, Oregon, Fitchburg. I've lived on that property for 77 years. Yeah, our farm borders that on the north side of this parcel. farmland where I live on has been in 3 generations. My grandfather, my father, and I still own a small portion of that, which is directly across from where the entrance of this site is. I have some considerations. Probably one of the biggest one is property value. I've talked to realtors. They're telling me that my property value will go down anywhere from 5 to 25%. And he told me, this person that I talked to, it's a well-established, he sells over 100 houses a year. He says people that are going to come out, I have 5 acres, that's what I have left. And he says people that come out and want to pay the premium price for that are going to look at this and say, we want the country living, we don't want this. And they'll get in their car and leave. Okay? The next thing I guess that I have the problem at is environmental. Runoff. That farm, I don't know if you're familiar with it at all. If you know where, most of the people I know here know where Burn Road is, and probably know where the land lays. It lays from the west to the east and slopes to the east to the railroad tracks. On the north side, it slopes on the upper part towards the north, towards Burn Road. The water flow coming off that in the 70 or 48 years that I've lived in this house, directly across from this site, I've seen the water come out of there and come over Burn Road, Burn Road 3 inches deep and come over into my ditch and on my side and run down to Murphy Creek. Runs down, hits along the railroad tracks and goes north into the creek. I've seen it pool down in the corner of Burn Road. It would be the south corner of the northeast corner of Burn Road in this property. Pool in that corner, and right in that corner there is a culvert underneath the railroad tracks that runs into Murphy Creek, which Murphy Creek is probably 10 yards from the other side of the tracks. The creek is right there. And this water all runs right in there. Then approximately, I would say it's probably a couple hundred yards down from there, there's a trestle. That water goes again under the railroad tracks and goes into Murphy Creek eventually there. I'm concerned about all these panels. I don't know how many cubic feet these panels take up, or square feet, I'm sorry. I would look at them as a roof on a house. And when you have these roofs sitting like this, and the water runs off, and you don't have any eave troughs, what happens? It starts causing ditches. And where the ditches, it starts running off. And what do you have? You have it, instead of soaking into the ground, it runs down these ditches or whatever. And then into Murphy Creek down there. Another thing is soil compaction. They're going to be driving all over this land for years, in between the panels, repairing, doing whatever they have to do. The soil compaction, I've been told by individuals that it'll take a long time and expensive to ever, in 30 to 40 years, to recover this back into agricultural land. Another thing I have is wildlife. We have a lot of deer there. We have Oak Hill Correctional Institution right to the south of this property. It's a very wooded area, very secluded. doesn't get hunted much. I've counted in the wintertime as many as 134 deer out in this field grazing on basically soybeans or if there was corn in there. All these deer basically come from the Oak Hill area and that quadrant to feed in there in the wintertime. They come from the north by my property and cross the road and go into that field. And by fencing this off from railroad to the top of the hill, it's going to cut off a lot of winter feeding in there. And I know there's a lot of deer in there. Another thing, I'd like to know the fencing that they're going to put around this. I was in the deer farming for quite a few years until the DNR put me out of business. I'd like to know the type of wire that you're using to fence this in. Can I ask that question?
They will answer the questions. I have notes, and they will answer the questions. They will answer the questions.
Yeah.
But we're not going to have the.
Okay. Well,
So
that's one question.
I will make
Well,
sure.
Let me tell you about the
I
fencing.
will make sure that they answer those questions.
Okay. The type of fencing, I believe, if you look at the pictures of the what they show you, they use a 6x12 wire. Okay, very big. Deer get their heads caught in it, and what happens is they start thrashing, and then they get their front leg caught in it or a back leg, and they hang on the wire. And I've seen a lot of deer farms and a lot of orchards that use this wire. And if the deer gets startled and run, or chased by coyotes or whatever, that can be a problem. Let's see. The sheep, the grazing and that type of stuff, that's going to be 30 acres of area. And with this wire being used, a coyote can get through that fencing. And coyotes like sheep. And how many sheep, I'd like to know how many sheep, I couldn't hear it on the acoustics there, how many sheep that are going to be grazed in there if they're grazing. Sheep. And one other thing I'd like to just, in ending, I would like to verbally express my thoughts about agricultural land in Fitchburg. We're using more and more all the time. I just came down Irish Lane, and there's a cat in there digging a hole right on the north side of Irish Lane already. And I'm sure there's more building. And I don't know, if we keep using this land, we aren't going to have any agricultural land or country land left. It'll all be houses, buildings, and that's what we'll have, and sidewalks. And I think that this solar should be looked at. Of all the buildings that we have in city, of houses and that, I think we should be looking at solar to be putting on roofs of these buildings and not spreading it out all over the city of Fitchburg. That's my opinion. Thank you very much for my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gunlock, and I'll try to get them to answer your questions. Welcome, Amy. Oh, no, that's fine. Work comes first. Any other committee questions before we go back to the
Question for Deanna. That question.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Roger?
Yeah, we'll come back to that question, Deanna, on how does the city handle issues that may not be followed 3 to 5 years from now in this project.
So what is before you this evening is a conditional use permit. And if Plan Commission were to approve that conditional use permit, you'll notice in the department memo, we are proposing 16 conditions on that conditional use permit. And if any one of those conditions, or if the project is no longer consistent as proposed in the application materials, the city can start issuing citations.
Okay. Let's kind of go through any other committee questions, and then we'll have a staff report, and then we'll bring the folks back up, and we'll make sure that the questions that were asked by the citizens get a chance to be answered. So any other committee questions?
Yeah, I have a question on decommissioning. How many years have you done this? How many years have your company done this?
One Energy was founded in 2009.
So have you done any decommissioning?
I don't know of any solar projects that have been decommissioned. This utility scale solar projects, as you saw at the beginning of the presentation, the price has come down precipitously over the last dozen years or so. Solar panels are warranted for 30 years, so I don't know of any that have been decommissioned yet.
Okay.
And then also, you've done soil tests, and any results on bedrock?
We have well reports from nearby. I don't have the soil boring test results yet.
Because if you're saying you're going down like 8 to 10 feet, what's driving those in?
Yeah, it has passed all of our initial due diligence screenings, which includes well reports, so we get a sense of the depth of bedrock at nearby wells. And so that gives us a pretty good idea. There usually aren't any surprises. If there are, we can mitigate.
And then the distribution line along Burn Road, what is that, a buried cable? Or
No, there's a 3-phase line right along the road.
there is?
Yep, just like a normal power line.
Oh, so you won't be increasing power line poles or anything?
No, it matches what's on the distribution line. So the solar panels produce 15 volts DC that go into the inverters. The inverters convert that to alternating current, and then the transformers step up that 800 volt alternating current to match what's on the 3-phase line, which I believe is 24.9 kV. It's 13.8 kV, sorry.
And as far as, ag related, they're always talking about everything going electric, including now they got electric tractors. You gonna be able to plug any tractors in out there?
There's no plan for vehicle charging there.
I suppose the farmer would have to pay for that.
I think it would be an additional conditional use permit.
Shelley, you had a question.
Just one, since a lot of the public comments had to do with stormwater runoff, is this project big enough that they would require a permit? Do you know?
I believe so. So anytime there's disturbance of more than 4,000 square feet, they are required to pull a stormwater permit.
Okay, so hopefully
And I would imagine, given the dirt that they will need to move just for the driveways, I would imagine that they will definitely meet that requirement.
In a commercial application, that's true. In an agriculture operation, you don't need a conditional use to move that.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say that's more of a commercial operation, putting them in? Agriculture.
Did you bring it up?
Yeah,
We are subject to DNR stormwater permit. Can confirm.
Wouldn't you say that's more of a commercial operation than an agricultural?
Well, we'll try to cover that because state law gives a wide brush for solar. So I'll have Deanna cover some of that for you.
Just my understanding is that a stormwater permit is necessary for this project.
But your understanding is not, so.
No, I don't know the facts on that. What I do know is if a farmer were to plow a field, he does not need a stormwater permit.
Right.
Of course.
We will have a stormwater permit with the DNR.
Thank you. Roger, you had a question?
We've had experience with one of the solar fields here in Fitchburg, of which we find that the panels are not in sync. They're, 99% or 98% are all faced one way, but there's always some that are out of sync. How does your company handle that type of thing so it doesn't occur?
When there's a failure of the module tracking system, there's an alert sent to numerous stakeholders who own the project, basically personnel from One Energy, MGE, or if MGE down the line contracts with someone else to operate and maintain the project, it would go to them. And then generally within 2 weeks, that is rectified. So it's depending on the severity of the issue, it could be one tracker out, or it could be, failure of numerous for whatever reason that lends itself to urgency from the company. Basically, they're motivated to keep power flowing because that's how the project essentially pencils economically, right? It has to produce power for it to be a valuable asset. So if the modules are not tracking the sun, it's inefficient, and they have every incentive to make sure that it's working.
Mechanically, is your system the same as what we have, or not? I mean, do you have the same mechanical type of gearing and all of that we're witnessing on this other unit here in Fitchburg?
We built the Tyto solar project. We did not build the O'Brien solar project, and I don't have any information about the O'Brien solar project.
How do you, tell me about your, the reason I ask this question, it's kind of, I don't know what, it's disheartening to think that we have a project here that is not functioning properly.
Sure.
And quite honestly, I have a lot of farmer friends and people say, hey, what's going on? Those panels aren't together. They're not together.
Are we talking about O'Brien?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't speak to the competitions.
Okay, let me ask you this question then, and maybe I might be getting into this too much, but I'll ask it. You have competitors in the business.
Yes.
Is your mechanism upgraded or different than a competitor's? Or are all panels mechanically the same? And if they are we going to see this same thing?
Great question. There are different products on the market. We use a company called ATI. We used it on the Tyto project, and if this project gets approved, we would use it on this project as well. There are lesser quality products that are more prone to failure. I wish I could give you a better answer.
Excuse me,
Would you like to?
where are your panels manufactured?
Just briefly, my name's Seamus Fitzgerald, work with Peter at One Energy.
Yeah, my question was, where are your panels manufactured?
And right before that, Peter has something he'll share on where the panels come from, but to the trackers specifically. Our boss, Eric, has been incredibly instrumental in solar here in Wisconsin. and the quality of the tracking unit specifically, not the solar panel, but the actual gear that moves the solar installation, is one of Eric's biggest concerns. And without exaggeration, when I started 2.5 years ago, he is pained deeply to see that when we see a solar project, because this is our business, this is what we're trying to do. So when you drive, not the O'Brien Field, but up to the north of Madison, you're coming near Dane County Airport, you'll see some of those, they're always sticking to the side. That hurts us internally, deeply. And so we spend an enormous amount of time trying to focus on the tracking equipment specifically. And in the iterations of projects that Eric has brought to the table over the past 8 years, that has been one of the key focuses. ATI that he talked about is a incredibly beefy steel system that uses a really thick gear as it's turning through, because that is, like Peter said, on the economic side, if we have a panel looking the wrong way, we're not making as much money. It's as simple as that. But then on just the look and how we're doing in the community is incredibly important to us. And so though there are failures with everything, we have maintenance plans. The uptime, the effective use of these products is drastically increasing as the market increases. But we are always making improvements. And so we're very happy with the quality of ATI. It is, like Peter said, a little bit higher quality, so it costs a little bit more. But the long-term longevity of it is much better than some of the systems that you see in the past, some that have already been produced. So just a comment to that. We're always trying to improve on that, but it hurts us first and foremost when those panels don't look the right way. So thank you.
Amy, do you?
I didn't hear an answer to where your panels manufactured.
The modules that we're using that we used this year for the Taito project are manufactured in Vietnam by a Japanese company called VSUN.
Okay. Amy, do you have any questions?
Got it. I apologize profusely for being late. First of all, I have work conflict. But I guess I just have a couple of comments. And if repeating something that was earlier in the meeting, I feel terribly bad about that. But I have a couple of just main concerns. The first one is just if this project ends up going, the restoration of the farmland back to its previous use, because digging down 8 and 10 feet, my concern is preservation of farmland. I grow like green stuff that shoots up and feeds cattle and horses in my fields. So my main concern would be at the end of your contract or the end of your term, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it may be that you agree on, what would you do to restore this farmland back to how it is today? So I would expect that soil sample match today's soil sample in 30 or 40 years from now. So that's going to be obviously costly. No? Okay.
The plan is to have pollinator, it's a grazing and pollinator mix. It's called a fuzz and buzz mix, planted throughout the project. So we would expect soil to be improved at the end of the project life.
Okay. My second concern is there's obviously some neighbors in the room here that live near this project. If it ends up passing, I think they don't want to have to see it. They don't have to look at it. So what is your plan for, like, not baby trees that are going to grow in 20 years, but like trees now, so that when these folks are driving to their residences at the end of the day, they just don't see this stuff? Because if a panel is pointing X, Y, and Z direction, I expect you're driving down and maintaining it for the landowner and making sure that it's generating whatever you have to do. So I don't even want an opportunity for our residents to have to see these and call us and be like, hey, they're not functioning properly. So what's your plan?
Yeah, so as requested by neighbors and Fitchburg, we have a vegetative screen plan along the north. It's a basically staggered hardy spruce, like a Black Hills spruce, and then service berries. There is some screening along the north today. And from the road, when you pass those trees, you can't really see the field at all. So I would expect similar outcome from the screening plan that we've provided.
Do you have a photograph or like an imagery of the screening plan that we could look at? Just a visual of like the end product, like what it would look like?
Yeah, it's in your packet.
You're catching me because I'm late, so I apologize about my packet.
Sorry.
But I hired a really good new employee, so.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Roger, pull it up.
yeah, thanks.
Or maybe we could share it on the screen. I think these folks in the audience would like to see it. They don't have a packet.
I still walk my view. Pine trees, I still walk my view. And I live there all day, every day. So, I mean, like, really, what happens?
Please come up if you're going to speak.
Yeah.
Please come up.
It's definitely worthwhile.
Sorry, we can't hear you. The folks at home can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Yeah. It's worthwhile to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
I live, what direction do I live in?
West.
Okay. Yeah, I live on the west side, so Adam's beautiful shed is right on my property, so I get to see that. I get to see his antique tractors. Now I'm going to see these pine trees. I don't want pine trees. I want to look at the beautiful land that I spent a lot of money to look at. And I'm there every day. He doesn't live out there. And it's just really upsetting. Because pine trees are going to help block them, but it's not. Why do I want to look at that?
May I respond?
Yes, you
It's
may.
already there.
At the, when we had the neighbor meeting, the Copuses asked that we hold off on screening so that they could see what it looks like. And they told us that they kind of appreciate having light coming in from the east. So on a subsequent phone call with Carrie Copus, I told her that we would work in good faith to screen it if they decide they really didn't like the way it looked when this project is constructed. We have no interest in being a bad neighbor. We want to be good neighbors. We have projects where adjacent landowners are the grazers. You know, we generally don't screen projects that are greater than 250 feet from a residence. This project is not closer than that to any residence, and we are still screening it per neighbor's request.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not too far from the backyard of my house that those screens start. You can see where my house is, and I only have to go a few hundred feet, and I'm looking at those.
Amy, did you have other questions?
I don't think I really have any other. I just feel so bad
Thank
for
you.
being delinquent. So I'm like,
No, that's fine. We got a time factor. We got to be sure we are aware of.
I've got one comment again. When you keep mentioning Black Hills spruce. I tried those, and I was told they aren't native to this area.
Okay.
And I lost 2 of them trying. Just so you.
We've had pretty good luck with Black Hills spruce. There are other hardy spruce trees.
Thank you. Can we get a staff report from Ian? One question I have for you is, according to state law, from the conversation we've had, when these projects are submitted like that, the municipality has very limited control. Can you address that? Because I think the neighbors would really appreciate hearing that, of what the state legislature has done to take some of the local control away.
Yes, I can briefly speak about that. Because this is something that is part of the proposed for the entire grid system, for our electrical system, for our infrastructure system, the state has limited what we can do and propose and change on these projects. And even more specifically, conditional use permits are limited in what the requirements and conditions that a city can put on a conditional use permit. So it is important to recognize that staff works closely to work with an applicant for a solar project, but we do have to recognize that we can't put into place requirements that are excessive or designed to kill a project. Does that make sense?
State law supersedes anything we can do. Okay. Staff report.
Okay, the staff memo lays out nearly all of these things that we have discussed. Just briefly, the current zoning is AX, and solar infrastructure is a conditional use under that zoning. Staff provides background for you all. I'll take questions, but in brief, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use with 16 conditions.
Could you read them briefly? Summarize them.
Okay. Let me just pick out some of the important ones here.
They're all important to us.
Then I'll read them all. Okay, so no other permit or approval is waived or deemed satisfied except for the approval provided herein. Number 2, the solar project shall remain in substantial compliance with the application materials included in the Plan Commission packet but dated October 17th, 2023. An approved architectural design is required with landscape plan. The landscape plan shall include a landscape buffer along Burn Road. The applicant shall also work with the neighboring property owner to the west to provide landscape screen as agreed upon. Number 4, an erosion control and stormwater management permit is required if land disturbance will exceed 4,000 square feet. And we do expect that. A stormwater maintenance agreement recorded with the Dane County Register of Deeds office may be required by the city engineer for management of native vegetation. New driveways shall require permits from the city of Fitchburg. The proposed solar project perimeter fence shall maintain a minimum distance of 75 feet from the existing wetland to the east of the railroad line adjacent to the subject property. Trees with a caliper of greater than 10 inches shall not be removed. Existing mature vegetation, tree lines, hedgerows not in areas of construction shall be protected and maintained until decommissioning to the greatest extent possible. Number 9, the development shall not substantially impair or limit the current or future agricultural use of the surrounding parcels of land zoned agricultural. Number 10, the development shall limit impacts to the soil quality with existing grades to the extent possible. Number 11, the project shall be decommissioned and the site restored within 12 months after the facility ceases electrical generation for a continuous 12-month period. Decommissioning shall include the removal of solar arrays, cables, electrical components, and any other associated items. The site above and below ground shall be substantially restored to the same condition as existed prior to construction. Number 12, the applicant shall provide the city planner an estimated cost for decommissioning and restoration of the site. Number 13, management of grazing/pollinator vegetation inside the fence and maintenance of screening landscape materials per the attached vegetation installation and management plan are required under this conditional use permit and is the responsibility of the owner and operator of the solar project. Number 14, the city planner shall be notified of any transfer of ownership of the lease and provided with a local contact representative of the solar project operator. Number 15, the applicant's responsibility to comply with all fire department requirements. And number 16, it is the applicant's responsibility to comply with all public works requirements.
Do you have any other staff? Okay. I'd like to go back to you guys to ask some of the questions that the neighbors had asked, and we'll try to get the answers for you. And are you able to hear us? Okay. We talked about the power lines earlier, and there is adequate power lines on Burn Road. I've been told by Madison Gas and Electric that is in their plan to rebuild that line. That line is one of their older lines. So just an FYI that when you say they're not going to do it, Madison Gas says they are going to rebuild.
I didn't say that they aren't going to do anything, but
No,
the site has been studied and they have deemed it appropriate for their
I understand.
for their distribution
Right,
lines.
and so was the Irish Lane one, but they did rebuild it, and they do plan on rebuilding Burn Road, which is a benefit to all of us, because I know some of the neighbors lost power for a fair amount of time. A new power line, rebuilding the infrastructure, that part may be a good thing. Okay, you should plan to screen, and then if the neighbors decide they don't want it, but you should still plan to screen. We talked about decommissioning and who enforces that. One of the questions by the neighbor, and I've asked you this before, but for the record, there was a neighbor from the east, Mr. Lynch's brother, who asked about the glare, the possibility of glare driving from the east. He was concerned about the glare because of the railroad crossing. And that was not my question, that was his question. We've talked about that before, but for the record, could you address that, please?
Yeah, happy to. So I submitted a glare report. There's a third-party organization through which you can submit all the information, and it will produce a glare report. I did that along Burn Road. I did it at the neighboring residences at heights of 5 and 10 feet. There will be no glare. In general, solar panels are designed to absorb, not reflect sunlight. So glare is generally not an issue, as evidenced by the growing number of solar projects near airports. Airports are famously glare averse, right? So
Okay.
there will not be any glare.
Thank you very much. There was quite a bit of talk about the runoff, compaction, the fence type, the grazing of the sheep, how many? I don't know that you can answer that question. What type of fencing? Can you address some of the issues that Mr. Gunlock raised about the fencing? I know that those same issues were raised at the public meeting.
Yes, Mr. Gunlock, I believe, is mistaken about the gauge of the fence. This is I don't know how well you can see it, but this is what our fence looks like. We have never had wildlife get stuck in our fences. We are not fencing off the entire property. We're not fencing from the railroad to the edge of the parcel. There is, I believe it's 86 feet from the fence to the edge of the parcel, and another 100 feet or so, again, to that wetland. Adam plans to farm around the project, so presumably deer would be able to also walk around the project. And also because of the way we do our vegetation throughout the project, really it may not look exactly like this, but these projects, because of the way we do vegetation, they really come to life. You would see more, I would expect to see more wildlife in a project that's maintained like this than on row cropping. Similar outcome with regard to stormwater and erosion. Water infiltration is improved when you have biodiverse seed mix rather than row cropping, monocropping. So I would not expect any negative outcomes in terms of stormwater runoff. We also, again, have to comply with our DNR stormwater and erosion control permit.
Okay.
Jerry, you had a question right there, Mark.
How are you gonna keep your sheep in the property then if you're only gonna have fence on?
Mr. Lynch, you have to speak into the mic.
How are you gonna keep the sheep in the property if you're only gonna have a fence on two sides?
It will be fenced on all four
It will
sides.
be,
He just said there wasn't gonna be
No,
fence.
It's fenced on all four sides.
It's enclosed by a 8-foot tall fence.
What, oh, set back on the railroad side, so there will be fence along the railroad side, it'll just be set back farther.
In front of you is the site plan. You can see around the project there's open space.
On the compaction, I believe that during construction there may be compaction. What type of machinery, vehicles are you using to prevent some compaction? Compaction lasts about 5 to 7 years on agricultural land. That's my experience. And what I found is, and a good example of that is the 3.5 inches of rain that we just had. We have a stand of oats where I normally have runoff. I had absolutely no runoff. The rain was not a real heavy driving rain, but we had absolutely no runoff where I normally get quite a bit in the back of my sloping land.
We pre-seed our projects with oats or winter rye or winter wheat. So we try to maintain vegetation throughout the actual construction of the project. That really helps with erosion control. We also, you can see on the site plan that I've got before you right now, there's the road that comes down, and then there's that purple part kind of in the middle. That's our laydown area. So that's the primary location where heavy machinery would be. But maintenance and installation, obviously there's going to be movement around the site. But in terms of maintenance, you can drive a truck between the rows, but you would only expect there to be, maybe a pickup truck once a month for testing and ongoing maintenance. It's not, you wouldn't see heavy machinery on site on any kind of regular basis.
After the build.
Construction is finished.
After the build. Thank you.
Can I ask one question on that
Go ahead.
drawing while you have it up there? Is that to a scale that there's that many panels on 22.5 acres? Is that what it is? It's actually 21.5 acres, the actual footprint of the site? I know it's 30 acres you're using, including the perimeter and all, but in a packet, I saw that it's 21.5 acres of solar panels, the actual footprint. Is that to scale that there's that many panels on 21.5 acres and you can drive a truck between those?
I'm not sure what the 21.5 is referring to. Is that?
That's the actual footprint of the...
Underneath the panels themselves. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Disconnected impervious surface ratio. So
Okay.
in other words, the solar panels.
Yeah,
that
without
are-
looking
since they're
back on
elevated,
where it is
yeah.
on our packet, but...
Yeah, that's correct. And this is to scale. I think the scale is one. Well, obviously the TVs are all over the place in terms of like the actual size, but this printed map is 1 inch is 80 feet. I believe is the scale on this one. Oh, actually, I think I might have it open here. Hang on.
It just seems, off scale, but maybe it is.
My Zoom controls are in my way, so I can't.
Mark, I've got one last question.
Let him finish.
This one doesn't have the scale on it.
Well, you probably even know the number of panels, right?
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, thank you, Adam. Yeah, 1 inch is 80 feet. Yeah, as expected. I do have the number of panels. I can pull that up in a second.
Have you looked at have you compared the runoff on a solar corn operation of the same slopes over a 40-year period versus the runoffs on a field like this that's covered with grasses?
I do not have that comparison in front of me.
Common sense would tell me that the erosion would be considerably less over that period of time if it's covered, but I have no data to back that up.
The module quantity is 13,078.
Okay, thank you. Roger?
Yeah,
had a
just to
question.
follow up on you. Adam, have you been row cropping that area?
Adam, you'll have to state your name and address, please.
Adam Guile, mailing address is 1870 Paddock Place in Fitchburg, and I have been alternating that site between corn and soybeans for the last 4 years. 3 years of that, I've already moved to planting rye as a winter cover crop to prevent erosion as best as possible.
Okay. My point being is one of the neighbors, Jerry, was talking about the runoff down to the south or to the northeast corner of your property down by the railroad track there and everything. And I guess my point being is that if you've been row cropping and now you're going to go to continuous legumes or grasses, just to follow up on what Mark said, and I agree, the chances of runoff are reduced substantially from row crop to grasses or legumes. And obviously you've been trying to work on that. So I would hope that this project would not have that concern that the neighbors have.
I would certainly expect that moving to a continuous ground cover, you would experience little to no. The amount of, if that ground is left bare, I wouldn't have soil left at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
The county encourages farmers in the Yahara River watershed to plant cover crops and move towards no-till practices. Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District pays for that type of farm management plan. I think it's in everybody's best interest for all farmers to plant cover crops for wind erosion, for rain runoff, and so I do.
Okay.
You will, I doubt once this project is built, the runoff from the project site will be very minimal. There will still be farmed land that there could be runoff on, because you will have some row cropping.
Yeah, this proposal by One Energy today is not to turn 76 acres into 30. Yeah, and I'll still be farming around the site.
Exactly. The one suggestion I have, one concern I have, as Mr. Gunlock stated, I've been a long-time resident in the neighborhood. The driveway, any driveway that you put in, is a harder surface than the ground, and it's going to tend to channel water off of it. How are you going to address the runoff of the driveway to keep that to a minimum, because it all comes towards Mr. Gunlock's property on Burn Road?
We're extending the culvert that is there currently. We had proposed a 16-foot wide driveway, and the city requested that we change it to, or by ordinance, we need to change it to 20-foot wide. So that would actually increase impervious surface. Unfortunately, if we can get it back down to 16 feet, we would certainly be happy to do that to mitigate runoff. But
do you have any contours on the driveway itself that will slow water to a point? You should consider that.
I think it shows.
Because it'll slow water to a point, and then You can take it off to the side and mitigate it there, because that long of a driveway with that slope, you're going to get a fair amount of driveway runoff. If you can stop the other stuff, that's great. But the driveway runoff, you guys need to address that.
Our civil engineers are very dedicated to ensuring that the runoff and basically the path of the water remains unchanged, or is as similar as possible after the project is complete as it is before the project begins. And I would expect the DNR stormwater permit to require that that mitigation that you're describing.
I agree with that 100%. My concern is the speed of it. You're not wanting to change where it goes. I understand that, and that's great. The speed of the water coming down that driveway is a concern. And a gravel driveway will funnel water very quickly. I have one.
I probably should have just stayed sitting here, but
Mr. Goff.
the leased area for the solar field does extend, of course, along the driveway. And so anywhere within the leased area, you will still see a continuous cover crop. So I assume then, and I may be wrong, but that alongside of a gravel impervious driveway, you will have continuous cover crop to help absorb some of that water runoff.
That would be helpful, but I certainly want to see it in the plan, and I'm not using the right term, but some speed bumps for lack of the proper words, to slow the water down. The slower you can make that water come down that driveway, the better off you're going to be.
We generally maintain a 5-foot buffer on either side of the driveway that also gets seeded.
Yep. Thank you very much. We have we have other things on the agenda, so let's wrap up.
I have a question on that erosion too. The direction, I know your engineers got this all figured out, but the direction that those panels are sitting on that diagram, if they were turned the other way, would that be better for erosion? Or are they just positioned in this way so they're better for solar?
The panels move throughout the day, so they're not going to create this channeling effect because they move. There's not like a continuous drip line that's
when there's
static.
Snow on top of them, and then the snow thaws, it's going to cause erosion, and that's what I'm saying. Is you've got the panels. It looks like to me, I drove by there, that the panels are directed more like in a position that would, help the erosion or increase the erosion is what I want to say, because they're directed toward the lower grade.
They are not going to increase the erosion.
Whereas turning the other way, I would think I know it's pretty flat in that area. There is a swale that underneath there of drainage, but
all right.
I just wanted to know if evidently it was considered by your engineers that it's better for solar.
We have a time constraint to get out of the room, and we have some other things on the agenda that we have to get to before that. So thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve conditional use permit request CU 2425-23 with the conditions set forth, 16 conditions set forth in the staff memo.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second made. And again, I'll state for the neighbors, state law really ties our hands. We can ask for amenities, but the ability to deny is really not something we can do, according to state law. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the like sign. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you very much, to everyone for attending. No, okay. Our next item is a request for rezoning, and there's no one here to speak to that.
We're going to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item B. Item B and C are tied together, but item B is certified survey map request CS 25323, and there is no one here to address the committee on that. What do you have for a staff report on that item, please?
I will do so. And I'm just going to, if I could go ahead and put up my screen if you don't mind.
Please, thank you.
Okay. So this is a request for a CSM and a rezone together by Christopher Bodke, agent for Ryan Lutke and the Schaefer Partnership. So Ryan Lutke and his spouse own a lot up here on Irish Lane. And then the owner of the larger lot is Schaefer Partnership. The smaller lot is zoned RL, or low density residential. The larger lot is zoned rural development. The request before you is to expand the low density residential lot owned by Lutke by about 1/10 of an acre. And that is to accommodate the Lutke's shed and fence and gardens that have encroached onto the Schaefer property. So it's actually pretty straightforward. What is happening is the Lutkes will take ownership of this kind of L-shaped piece of the Schaefer property to address encroachment onto the Schaefer property. So with that, this piece needs to get rezoned from RD, or rural development, to low-density residential. There's no new parcels created. There's no impact on any claims, and each one of the parcels will remain in compliance with the zoning. So staff requests approval of the certified survey map with 9 conditions, and then staff requests approval of the rezone with 4 conditions. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee?
One quick question, for clarification, what does the difference in RD, rural development zoning, as opposed to rural residential?
So actually it's low density residential, and rural development, or RD, is kind of one of our old leftover kind of zoning districts. I think back in the day, the city realized outside of the urban service area, there's quite a bit of business development and kind of mixed use development that didn't necessarily fit well into an agricultural zoning district, but really wasn't a residential zoning district. So we call the RD, or rural development district, as kind of our catch-all. Does that make sense?
Well, would that be optional for like the rural cluster ordinance?
Oh, no.
Not the same.
No, actually, by code, we can't rezone. Actually, by code, we wouldn't want to do that. We would have to look at a different zoning district.
It's an old leftover one, so there's some of it still out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Deanne.
Oh, yeah, there is. And technically, we can't rezone something to RD.
Right.
We can rezone out of it, but...
Right, it's a code it's a zoning code that is no longer in existence, but we have to deal with what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
If that
Yeah,
makes
I guess what I was saying is you can't zone out of RD into rural cluster.
I guess if I would have to look a little bit more closely. I think that what we would do if we actually had a proposal for a rural cluster development, we would end up calling it a PD, a planned development district, I think.
Right, okay. Just for clarification, I had no idea what RD meant.
Yeah. Sure.
Deanna, I have a question about Irish Lane. Is that I can't read it from here or even here right in front of me, but is that, there's a obvious dedication of
There is.
of that, but is 33 feet sufficient? Is it I'm not sure if I have the road names, the type of road name correct here, but a rural collector where it would be 40-foot right-of-way dedication rather than 33?
Irish Lane is not considered a collector.
Okay. It doesn't meet that 40-foot requirement rather than
The
33.
county roads do. Some of the other ones do, but I don't think Irish is one of them. Now, Danny, I had a question for you. The rest of the farmland around it, that's still AX.
No, it's RD.
It's RD.
It's existing RD.
Okay.
I don't know why.
What
and
size parcel is it?
It's like 80 acres, isn't it?
It's a big parcel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and what is allowed in RD, in the old RD versus AX?
A lot more. Basically, everything that's rural, everything that's low density residential plus a little bit more. I can go up and see. I got to get myself orientated here.
So
right?
what is allowed on that? What is a person allowed to put on that parcel?
What I can do is just bring up.
Because that's a concern.
Yeah. Well, of course, they're not asking for a rezone there.
I understand that.
Yeah. Just to be clear. And so it's already zoned rural development. And so all agricultural uses and all uses in RL.
Okay. What is RL? What are the uses in our rural? What is?
Well, RL is low density residential.
Okay.
So
But-
it's essentially a residential district, then an agricultural district. There is a wider range of conditional uses
Okay.
in RD than what you will find in like low density residential.
Okay. Are we? I know we're not looking at that parcel now. But with that zoning, could residential be requested? Unsewered residential.
One single, well, that's only with a claim.
Okay, but the whole part is a large parcel that's rural development, and that's concerning to me. So.
All new housing is going to have a claim outside the urban service area.
Right, and that's not in the urban service area, because I've been asked this question. This, even though it's RD, it's not in the urban service area, and there is no city sewer available to it to bring it into the
Not
sewer.
at this point.
So, the ag uses are the only uses that are allowable at this point in time.
Pretty much so.
Thank you. That was a concern to some of the neighbors, so.
Yep.
Well, with it being 80 acres, is it 80.54 remaining after the zoning
Yep,
change?
80.54.
That'd be about right.
So that would allow 2 claims?
No, the claims are based on 1983 or something like that, and we need to go back into the base farms. That's how the claims were assigned. I think it was 19, or I don't know, that's when we became a city. But the claims were assigned based on farms back in the day.
Right, and
And this, we probably looked at that, but I don't think they have any claims on this one right now.
there possibly, by the acreage, there could be 2.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm.
But I think there
It
was some,
depends.
I think there was some taken off of it.
Okay.
There's one up along the park, so I think a claim was used on that.
Could they transfer a claim?
Right,
in?
that's what I was,
You always can transfer a claim.
so,
If you own land that has it, yes, you can, and it could fall under the cluster development,
use
which
it as a
we've never had.
so technically, they could buy 2 claims and put 2 residential
No,
splits on there?
no, you cannot do that. You can transfer, if you have, in the one we just did for the Mant family, they had, in their amount of land they own, they transferred one onto that parcel. So you can transfer amongst parcels, existingly owned parcels. We've not had any purchase of development rights yet. We talked about that.
Well, the reason.
But it's in the
Yeah.
cluster, it was in the cluster program where we talked about that.
Are we ready for a vote on the?
I call for a question.
Call the question. Call the question on the rezone for the parcels.
5 feet?
Okay, I recommend that we accept the rezoning, if I've got the right one, it's
Yep.
AZ,
RZ.
or I'm sorry, RZ 2524-23, request by Christopher Banke, and I request a vote on that.
Yep. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those, there's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, a like sign. The motion is passed. The rezone, we'll need a motion on the rezone also, please.
Give me the certified survey next, please.
We'll need a motion on the item B. Certified
Yes,
survey
5B.
map.
I make a motion that we accept certified survey map request CS 2523-23, request by Christopher Banke.
Been a motion made, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, a like sign. It has passed. Thank you very much. Staff report,
Yeah, let me just offer a couple brief comments where we are launching officially the South Stoner Neighborhood Plan and the Greenfield Neighborhood Plan. The first steering committee, and I will send out dates and information just so that you all know. The first steering committee for South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Plan is November 1st. And then the Greenfield, the first steering committee for Greenfield is going to be November 13th. Both will be held in this room. And then the first public information meeting that we are expecting, we're going to do a joint for both of the neighborhood plans. This room, December 4th. I will send out some more information for you as the times and everything get finalized, but I just wanted to let you know that. And then staff has been working diligently on a planning process for the Nine Springs area that you all might just be interested in for around Lacey that has not developed right yet. So we are working with a senior at UW-Madison. She's going to be leading a planning process for us to take a look at future development options. They're along Lacey, just west of 14. And then we're having our first public meeting November 2nd from 6 to 7, actually at Shine. Shine is right on Lacey right there. So that's all I got. Chair?
thank you very much. Any questions for Deanna?
When is Lacey Road going to open up?
Okay, if we.
Very soon.
We are.
It is very soon.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
There's a motion made.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.